Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover 120 here, and I'm here with the final review of the series I'm currently reviewing, and that is for none other than the Saw series' brand newest installment, not Spiral, guys, and the last previous one that came out in 2017, and that is, which was the return of the Saw series, and that is definitely goes to Jigsaw. Now, we all know. Let's recap. From 2004 to 2010, we were greeted with a Saw film once every Halloween, each film built on the foundation of the previous film, literally deeming them as iterations of one another. Now that time has passed between films, and new films and ideas have come out since then in the torture porn genre. New grounds had to be broken. There are diehard Saw fans, well, like me, who know most every little intricacy of the first 7 films, but nobody cares about the old formula anymore. It tired itself out. Instead of reiterating, it was now time to innovate. Well, because technically, reception on these films varied. Like first Saw, a masterpiece in horror. Saw 2, a good sequel. Saw 3, an also averagely good sequel. Saw 4, a real just disappointment. Saw 5, the second worst Saw movie. Saw 6, major improvement over 4 and 5, except definitely nowhere good like the original trilogy were. And finally, there was Saw 3D, the biggest disgrace to the Saw series. But now, ever since then, time has passed. However, around like 2014 or so, there were rumored talks of an 8th Saw movie coming. And those talks confirmed to be true, as originally supposed to be titled Saw Legacy, was confirmed and set to be released in 2017. Saw was back. However, the Saw Legacy title wouldn't last long because around then, the title would be changed to what we now know as Jigsaw. And this time we would get co-writers Josh Stolberg and Peter Goldfinger and co-directors Mike the Spearreek brothers. And the movie would eventually go on to come out in Halloween 2017. And how did I react? I was pretty pumped. I actually couldn't wait to finally get to watch a Saw movie in theaters. Which was definitely something I've been long waiting to happen, and glad that Saw was getting another chance on the big screen again. Well, it's Hollywood. There's no really ending to any franchise in Hollywood at this rate. This was actually my second time seeing this film, because the last time I did see this movie was opening night in theaters. Yeah, ever since I saw this movie in theaters opening night, I hadn't seen it since then, so I recently rewatched it to get this review, and bought the Blu-ray to be able to do that. So what is the movie about? Well, in the latest terrifying installment of the legendary Saw series, law enforcement finds itself chasing the ghost of a man dead for over a decade, and embroiled in a diabolical new game that's only just begun. Has John Kramer, the infamous Jigsaw killer, returned from the dead 10 years later to commit a series of murders and remind the world to be grateful for the gift of life? Or is this a trap set by a different killer with designs of their own? So, what did I think when I first saw this movie? Well, I thought it was, sure, it's still not as good as the first three, but it was better than the previous sequels to me. I would have to put this in 4th place, and here's why. It kind of follows an eerie similar path to the Jurassic Park franchise. JP had sequels that, while named they hold their own, after all started turning away some moviegoers and even got close to jumping the shark if they continued down the beaten path. So they created some space between themselves for some years and came back with a rebranding. Both films, Jigsaw and Jurassic World, serve as standalone films. If you want to treat them as such or jump into them anew, play off their respective first films in terms of content and paying proper homage. Modernize themselves and play more to a general casual audience. Jigsaw domestically, JW globally. Canon probably will turn out its own set of sequels and let veterans of the franchises appreciate the small bits they played off any one of the previous installments. Jurassic World lives in a PG-13 setting, though, and caved into more Hollywood tropes, including CGI, less than a much higher budget film. But Jigsaw still breaks a lot of new ground that will not play familiarly with to the Saw films of old. Now, let's go back to Saw 2 for a second. When Boseman jumped on board for Saw 2, he noted in his commentary track when some of the staples were for the franchise, including quick cuts. Sure, not really to agree with that assessment. This would continue for his next two films in the franchise, Saw 3 and Saw 4. Directors David Hackle and Kevin Gruter, directors for Saw 5, 6, and 7, followed up with a similar format. The films also found themselves in flashback haven, remained almost exclusively within interior settings, and centralized a set of characters to connect within a small universe. Jigsaw opens up the feeling that this is taking place in a larger city and environment, letting characters in and out of the games explore more and be realer people, and that they do not serve the purpose of the film alone, like they have lives outside of what we see. The framing of the film has changed. The color palette has widened, and Charlie Klaus's score is not as in your face, and the production simply doesn't feel as cheap. Right steps are made in making this so much more accessible, and I see this continuing in well, sure. Now for Jurassic World actually seems to remove sequels from canon. Jigsaw does play strongly in that sense that if you go without seeing recalling to keep in mind Saw 4 to 7, you'll probably be okay. Hoffman is completely out of the picture in Jigsaw. Well, actually, that actually makes sense. He actually died at the end of Saw 3D, so. But he's never mentioned or really concerned about. The only trace to be aware in this was that John lost a child with once in a relationship with Jill Tuck, and that there was an autopsy performed on his body. In fact, even though Saw 2 or 3 are good sequels, you could kind of disregard specifics about those and you'll probably be okay, really. Knowing that John Kramer was killed in the third film just might be enough, so technically, Saw 2 or 3 would still be canon if you just watch the film after Saw 3, really. This one really mostly plays off the first one to be most effective, though. Aside from the elaborateness of the traps and games being made, we can leave the first one understanding that a character-stricken individual puts victims in life or death scenarios because of moral sins they have committed, and if killed, gets a puzzle piece cut out of their bodies. Seasoned individuals also find some of the twists in the new film somewhat predictable simply because they know how Jigsaw thinks, and there are like half a dozen kills in this. There's still gore in this film, and I could guess, well, I kind of guessed it because it's a Saw movie, so you know what's probably going to happen if you are a fan of the series. But it doesn't really make the film inferior but being that Saw fan, it was still good to see this again. Like, Saw 4, 5, 6, and 7 now end up being fan service flicks, really, unless any Jigsaw, well, at the time they were. Maybe we'd see some Jigsaw sequels, but we didn't because we're going to be getting Spiral instead. So, most fans may not like this film, but I like this film a lot. It was good to go back to the Saw series. It was good to be at high school. That guy in high school who was a big diehard Saw fan. It could have been like complete garbage, just skippy like the 7th film was, but thankfully it wasn't. This reignites the franchise after it had stalled out in briefs for sure. For sure. But, however, did they make it a random sequel just after this, though? Well, no, they didn't. Because, like I said, we're going to get a Spiral. But there are some flaws I have with the movie. Sometimes it doesn't really feel much like a Saw movie. At times, it kind of rehashes a lot of plot twists from the Saw films. Like, the ending is... Now, when the Hello Zep theme came on at the end, I got really pumped, but I did notice something odd about the ending. The ending kind of copies the ending of Saw 5 because, well, this corrupt detective and this other guy, Ernest Trapp, and actually kind of copies both Saw 4 and 5's twists because the reveal that this one guy that the detective forces to go first is actually revealed to be the very first Jigsaw apprentice. Kind of this copies Saw 4's ending where it's revealed Mark Hoffman was a apprentice all along, and Saw 2 to an extent. And then, of course, the part where it copies Saw 5 is where he decides to frame the corrupt detective as the new Jigsaw killer, but, however, you don't really care for this detective because this detective's just a corrupt asshole, while Strama's technically just an innocent detective trying to catch Jigsaw, so in a way, you don't really care for this guy's death, but I did kind of notice it kind of did copy those two endings a little bit. But, however, despite those flaws, I think it's a pretty fine movie. It's a definitely a pretty fine addition to the Saw franchise. So I think to me, it's the fourth best of the series, and here's how I would rank it. I am going to give Jigsaw a 6 out of 10. And that officially wraps up my Saw reviews. We are done talking about Saw movies until I watch Spiral, Book of Saw. So, speaking of that, Spiral Book of Saw is going to be coming out in a month and a half. Well, technically 2 months, but I say month and a half because March is almost over. So, let's hope it's still good. And I hear Spiral's actually going to be kind of going in a different direction, so it'll be nice to see something a little different for a change. But yeah, anyway, that'll be it for this review. Thank y'all for watching, and if you like this and want to see more, then don't forget to like and subscribe to Movie Lover 120.